All right, you shepherd nurturers, how you guys doing? If we could go through the screen, we would want to hug, right? You guys are champions of relationships. And here's the cool part. You're actually making up 43% of the population. 43% of the population are shepherd nurturers. Why? Why would God create 43% of the population to be a shepherd nurturer? Well, as we talked about in the session, right? I love that quote by Gary Smalley, because life is relationships. Everything else is just the details. God knew that, and so he created you to be a shepherd nurturer. Hey, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine podcast. Excited to sit down today with Jodi Krauss. Hi, Jodi.
Hi, Daron.
We're going to talk today and discover what it looks like to be, to love like, to shepherd like a shepherd nurturer in God's kingdom. That's who you are. That's why you're here. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you.
Now, when we called you, asked you to come on, and said, we're looking for somebody who's been created by God on purpose and for a purpose, who is a shepherd nurturer. You literally jumped out of your seat. We're like, me, please me. Can it be me? Let me get on film. Let me get on camera and talk in front of people.
Yes, exactly. No. I think my specific words are, surely there is another shepherd nurturer that is more deserving to sit down with him. I serve in the background for a reason. Yeah. This is not my jam.
You said all of these things.
All of them.
Which is unbelievably cliche and a perfect segue to the role of a shepherd nurturer. We talk about with the five voices and the roles, right, is they all have a volume knob. And, the pioneer apostles, probably the evangelist connectors, they're up at 10, 11, loud, right? Yeah. Loud, proud, out in front. The shepherd nurturer often is at about a 2. And actually, one of the leadership lessons we teach teams is if you have to identify your shepherd nurturers on your team. And one of the points is if you're having a team meeting where decisions need to be made, you need to allow the shepherds to speak first. Because oftentimes, if somebody comes in with a big, bombastic, loud opinion about something, the shepherd nurturers will go, okay, that's fine, and just kind of, sink into the background. Yeah. But the voice in the gifting is so necessary because all of these roles, right, show us the heart of Christ in different ways, in the way that he exemplified every one of these roles and callings to perfection. And obviously we know he's the good shepherd, you know what I mean? And I guess in my brain, maybe teacher shepherd are the two that are most easily connected to Jesus. Obviously he was a rabbi, you know what I mean? And we all are drawn to that nurturing, loving side of who Jesus is. And that's how he's created you, Jodi. And you came through DNA. You're like an OG.
Very much an OG.
So we were just kind of tracking your first experiences way back in the day, somewhere probably around 2012 maybe. Mm-hmm. So if you can get in the time machine and remember that. Okay. You said you didn't have kids yet.
No.
Newly married?
Few years in.
Few years in. Mm-hmm. And so what drew you to can you remember what drew you to come to DNA that day, or what were some of your takeaways?
You. No, okay, so we'd been attending the church that you were a pastor at for a couple of years, and just every time you spoke, there was always something that resonated in me. At the same time, I was also working at Indiana Wesleyan, which is where I had done some graduate work in counseling. And while I was doing my graduate work, I was a life coach. And at the time, it was called Center for Life Calling and Leadership.
I remember that.
And so I got to sit down with students who were totally unsure about what major to declare and what direction their life was going. And I got to sit down with them and give them a few assessments. The director at the time had created an assessment, and it was all built around basically like, if you have the gift of teaching, teach. And so we gave that, and then we gave them Myers-Briggs. And then I would meet with them multiple times and debrief. These are your results. What resonates with you? Does anything, is it giving you any direction? And then also with that, there were careers that were associated with their results that we could dive into. But having had that in my background, when I heard you talk about spiritual DNA, it just totally clicked. And I wanted to learn for myself what my results were. So that's kind of how we decided to take the class.
Yeah. When you were doing the counseling with the students and stuff, what gave you life in that, Jodi?
Oh, when they would get it. or when they would say, yeah, that is me. And then being able to explore, well, if that's you, then these are the different avenues or possibilities that you could potentially explore to really thrive and for you to find joy in your work someday too.
I love it. I love it. As you look back, as you came through DNA, as you came through and got your results, and like I said, we're in a time machine here, trying to remember quite a few years. I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, so I'm asking you to remember, a decade ago. But maybe from that day, or just as you've walked through it, was it an affirming day? Was it a confusing day? Did it bring momentum? Kind of what was the results after you came through?
It was. I think I didn't have words prior to spiritual DNA for who God had made me to be.
Okay.
And so I think just having the results in front of me was very much affirming and confirmation of the things that I had been doing with my life to that point and who I wanted to be going forward. So it was very much of a affirming day. And since then, and when I really take the time to look back over my life and the things that I have been a part of, I can see how my shepherd nurturer has showed up. And I didn't know that it was shepherd nurturing at the time. I just was trying to love people well, and I was trying to encourage, and I was trying to give motivation or strength or support, whether it was, on the volleyball court in high school or as a life coach in undergrad. Even leading the nonprofit, there just were just little glimpses of, oh, that's who I am.
Right.
That's why I'm doing and saying those things.
Yeah. Well, I love that you look back. One of the quotes that I love that I use in DNA is a quote from Parker Palmer. It says, "Before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I have to listen to my life telling me who I am." Mm-hmm. And the reality about our spiritual DNA is I believe it's woven into who God has created us to be from the get-go, and if you're watching and you're listening and maybe you're not a follower of Christ yet, like those gifts and callings, I believe they're already in your spirit. It just needs to be brought to life. Yeah. And so, these things are you can see them, like you just said, right? They're present. And I do think that's the thing I love about DNA. And I hear many people say what you just said is like, there's some power in having handles, right? Having terms and handles and knowing like, this isn't just a sense I have, or I think maybe like, no, this is called something, this is real, and this is biblical, and I can actually study and apply this in my life.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to do, Jodi. I want to get into a little more of your story, but for somebody who may be watching, maybe listening, they're like, okay, I have never heard the breakdown of what a shepherd nurturer looks like. What I want to do, I want to just kind of transport us into the Spiritual DNA online course and play a quick clip of some of the highs and lows and blind spots, if you will, of the shepherd nurturer role. So our audience has a little context, and then we're going to unpack it with you. How's that sound?
Fantastic.
Let's do it. All right, you shepherd nurturers, how you guys doing? If we could go through the screen, we would want to hug, right? You guys are champions of relationships. And here's the cool part. You're actually making up 43% of the population. 43% of the population are shepherd nurturers. Why? Why would God create 43% of the population to be a shepherd nurturer? Well, as we talked about in the session, right? I love that quote by Gary Smalley, because life is relationships. Everything else is just the details. God knew that, and so he created you to be a shepherd nurturer. Here's the deal. You're a champion of people, and you work to take care of people and everyone around you. You're kind of like the relational oil of an organization or a family. And you innately, you understand how certain actions and choices and behaviors will actually affect people. As with every calling, there are virtues and vices and kind of that we got to take a look at. So at your best, as shepherd, you do, like I said, you function as this relational oil. You're committed to relational harmony. Even after conflict, you stick by people. You appreciate the contributions that other people make, and you just create a very harmonious environment. One of the cool things about shepherds is you also reflect the heart of God, right? Jesus himself was the good shepherd, and so that's really cool about you. Now here's some vices, maybe some blind spots for you. Sometimes you can be overly resistant to change, and sometimes you can be a little passive aggressive, right? Sometimes you're operating one of those core lies we talked about in the Enneagram session. You can be operating with that I am what people think and say about me. You want to keep people happy. You can be a people pleaser. And what can can happen there sometimes is you become a little passive aggressive. You got to watch that blind spot. Sometimes you can feel unable to challenge a proposed direction or decision, and you undervalue your voice. If there's a volume knob on all the callings, the nurturer shepherd volume is turned down to about a 2. And what you can begin to do is believe that your contribution or voice doesn't matter because it's soft. That is absolutely not true. Your relationships, your family, your church, your company need your heart, need your calling to step in. And to you may speak softly, but we need to hear your voice and know how valuable your contribution is. So much of how you lead and love as a shepherd nurturer truly does manifest the very heart of Jesus. You are so necessary. And we're back. We're back here with Jodi Krauss, shepherd nurturer extraordinaire. Now we have a little context for what some of these look like. So what we just listened to, right? Nurturers, they're champions of people, relational health, harmony. They love to protect values and principles, and they innately understand how certain actions, behaviors, or initiatives will affect people. Obviously, Jesus is the good shepherd. He's the perfect example of this. We could go to story after story after story of the way he loved and shepherded and nurtured people. Mm-hmm. For you in your life, as you look at some of those values, Jodi, are there seasons, are there stories, maybe even from childhood that pop into your head of like, wow, that was a role I played in my family even growing up?
That's a good question. In high school, I was dating a guy who wasn't a Christ follower at the time. His family didn't grow up in church, and I had grown up in church. My parents were very involved. We were at the pastor's house for pizza every Sunday night, and so it just was naturally ingrained in me. But kind of, I guess, the reputation that I have now, I had back in high school too. Like I was friends with everyone. I got to be, student body vice president my junior year, and then senior class president my senior year, and captain of the volleyball team. And so there was these leadership roles. But when I was dating this guy, he had started to go to the Young Life meetings.
Yeah.
And one of the directors had stopped me in the hall one day, and he was like, "Hey, I just wanted to keep encouraging you to, just keep being who you are. He's so close to accepting Christ." And I was like, "That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you for saying that." But it's not me. It's just like, it's Christ through me, because what he represents and what he stands for, like, it just makes sense. Why wouldn't I want to be kind and loving and accepting and welcoming and warm to everybody? So I guess that is one of the first things that really stands out to me when I think about my life as a shepherd nurturer. So I did an internship. It was a pretty intense internship where I lived at a church and basically served sort of like a youth pastor for 3 months. And I remember—
This was in high school still?
This was in college.
Okay.
And I remember saying to my friend, how do you hear the Lord speak to you? Because at that point, I couldn't really say that he speaks to me,
sure,
or I don't know what his voice sounds like. Yeah. And she was like, "Well, it's just as I'm reading the Bible, if there are things that resonate within me, or there are passages that stand out to me, or I'm listening to music and certain lyrics really hit me." I was like, "Oh, that seems really tangible."
Yeah.
And so now I have found myself, when I'm in the Word or worshiping or whatever, if he puts somebody on my heart, before I would have just, "Oh, I'm just thinking about so and so today." Mm-hmm. But now it's become this awareness that, oh, there's a reason that you're thinking about them. Mm-hmm. And so do something about that. Yeah. And so now what I do is I will send a text message, or I'll send an email, or maybe make a phone call. I'm not big on phone calls.
Culturally, we just don't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, we don't. But, and words are super important to me. I'm very careful, even in my work. I'm the behind the scenes operations person, but I am the client facing person. And so the words that I use are very selective. And so when I'm prompted to reach out to somebody, I love being able to send them a message, because then they can hold on to it. But then I can really clearly communicate, this is why I'm thinking about you. This is just what I want to share with you today. And
so why are words important?
Why are they important to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I just think they just hold so much power, and they can hurt, or they can really benefit and uplift someone.
See, what I love about the two things that I'm hearing you say, Joe, that I think is cool, is the high school context, right? Is for you, like, you are known, people were drawn to you, like, because of the way you love them. And like for you saying, like, well, just, I'm not trying to get him close to Jesus. Just like, why wouldn't you would just do this, right? Because like for you, it's this natural thing where I would just think about how you would love someone well because Jesus does, and that's what we would do, right? Yeah. And what's funny is, it's not funny. It's the difference of it is like, Jim McBurney, who's the executive director of our nonprofit, like, we talked about her. She's a, teacher guardian, and her episode will be next actually. But, she talks about the tug of war of tasks over people, right? And for her, a lot of times it's tasks. Like, well, we got to think about what we're doing task wise. And one of the things that I think everybody that we've sat down with to walk through their calling is it feels so natural. And like, for you, it's like, well, everyone would think this way, right? Like everyone would just be gentle and loving and be able to help people walk towards Jesus because it's just the thing you would do, right? And it's like, no, not at all. Mm-hmm. Or the thought of like, you think about the words you choose because of the way it actually impacts someone relationally, right? Like that. Exactly. That's not normative. I use thousands and thousands of words, and after I use them, I realize, oh, that might have been offensive to someone, right? So I talk before I think. Yes, that's what I do. I almost thought I had that backwards, but that's what I do. Got it, yeah. But I think that's not a small, like, I don't want you to miss that, and I don't want the audience to miss that. If that's where they're at, they're like, yeah, that is kind of how I am. It's like, well, that's because God's created you to show up the way he does in that way. Mm-hmm. What about leadership? Because it's interesting to me, a lot of times, shepherds do like to be in the background, right? They like to be behind the scenes, just loving and nurturing and making sure things happen. They're not loud, they're not boisterous, but there's still a great leadership gift and need there. And it sounds like when you were in high school, I mean, you have been drawn to leadership roles.
Yeah.
Did that feel natural, unnatural?
It was really natural.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an introvert, which is shocking to a lot of people. They would usually classify me as extrovert, but after I'm around a big group of people, I need to go be by myself.
Yeah, recharge a little bit.
But yeah, I think it just came out of wanting wanting everybody to feel included and a part of something that I will make myself feel uncomfortable by putting myself out there so that everybody else can feel at peace and feel comfortable. And I don't know if it was, I have an older brother and he was, a strong athlete, involved in music, all the things, great student. And so I kind of aspired to be like him, and he was a leader. But it just came really naturally to me. And in high school, on the volleyball team, I'd mentioned I was the captain. I actually tore my ACL my junior year and my senior year. So I ended up having to be on the bench for a majority of the seasons, both years. And but my teammates, and unfortunately we had a lot of coach turnover at the time, but my teammates, they would look to me for like the calls or like to tell them where to hit the ball or what was open. And I so much loved being able to be a voice for them and to be encouraging to them. And then as I've gotten older, I mean, I guess in my role at IWU and then in the coaching and leading the nonprofit, I am very much I'm a task person too. My second voice is guardian teacher. Okay, yeah. And I'm an ISFJ on the Myers-Briggs.
So you're not afraid to get stuff done.
I'm organized. I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. I'm a very high achiever.
Yeah.
So
you're a very loving achiever then.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. And then my role now, I'm the operations manager for our team. So I do all the behind the scenes stuff.
Right.
But I'm the one that leads the meetings. And so when you made that point earlier about let's make sure that the shepherds speak first. Like I do actually get to have the control and opportunity to do that, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable necessarily to me in those times. But after big meetings or after big events or whatever it is, I need my decompression time and then my quiet time the next morning with the Lord before I start the day.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit, because all of us need to be mentored by the Lord, right? In our unique callings. I do think sometimes it feels maybe it can feel easier for a shepherd because it's like, yeah, well, Jesus is, warm and fuzzy and a good shepherd, but he had all the callings, right?
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you as far as your relationship with Christ? And do you feel drawn to more of the shepherding type nurturing scriptures? Do you feel like you identify more with that loving, gentle shepherding side of Jesus? Kind of talk about that connection with the Lord in that.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Just because, like I said earlier, it just feels right. It feels natural to me. But I was reading. So my walk personally, I'm a early bird. I can wake up super early, but if you want me to be worth anything past 8:30, good luck. It's not happening. But I have found that when I can get up early, I spend quiet time with the Lord then. And I was reading in the Old Testament last week about Moses and Aaron, and I had been asked to do this podcast, and I was like, I don't have a voice. I don't want to. I don't want to be the
Send
voice.
Aaron.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly what it was. But just, and through that, I just, you see that the Lord's actions and how he saved them, but at the same time, like, he was jealous and he caused fire and he caused all this death and destruction to happen. And you're like, ooh, holy smokes, he's not to be messed around with.
Right.
And so, a lot of times, people might think that I have such a positive outlook or that I look through rose-colored glasses. And in some regards I do, but that's only because I know and feel so intimately connected to that side of him.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm oblivious to the pain and the evil in the world too. But I also feel like because I have the shepherd nurturing piece, I can use that to speak life or to bring hope into those dark situations or over all of that destruction. Well, there's a reason that happened, and there's a reason God was the way that he was in that moment. And let's talk about the reasons for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Let's talk about some blind spots real quick. I want to pull some of these out from what we saw here, right?
Great.
Yes. You're going to love this part. How about this? Nurturers can be overly resistant to change and sometimes be passive aggressive.
Oh.
Yay or nay?
Yeah. That's just so lovely. I mean, sometimes, yes.
Do you like change?
No.
Okay.
Not really. I've grown. I've definitely grown.
Okay.
And I'm more accepting of it, but I would like the change to be slow if we could ease into it.
What part of change tends to get you most nervous?
The unknowns.
Okay.
And for me, I never want to feel incompetent or look like I don't know what I'm talking about or what I'm doing. And so if there's change, I haven't done that before. I don't have the control over that yet. I don't know how to navigate through this yet. So I think that's the fear of the unknown is the most intimidating part.
One of the ones that this is going to be interesting to me is nurturers or shepherds don't usually value the contribution that they make. That's intriguing to me because I feel like as you've told some of the early life stories, and I wonder if maybe we juxtapose this to where you've been in the past, 5, 6, 10 years. Because I know there's like all of us, right? There's a version of ourselves, like the high school, college, like hard charging, make my mark in life version of ourselves. And then there's I've been on the world, the planet for a while, and I've had kids, and like I'm maturing in that. Mm-hmm. But it seems like I would say of all the leadership stuff you were doing, in those years, like I wouldn't see that being a blind spot for you. Do you struggle to value the contributions you make?
Yes, but I see that, maybe I gave of myself or I made a contribution, but for me, it's like, well, I don't really know if it had that great of an impact. Like I was willing to give myself to this, but did I really issue any change? That makes sense.
Yeah. So then what does impact look like? Who makes the bigger impact? What would look like impact to you?
Oh, somebody like you. If we're going to be honest. Just probably somebody that's out there in front of everybody and like people I know. Listen, I'm a psychology major, so I know that this is faulty thinking. Okay. But I guess impact for me is somebody who I guess is probably vocally louder, has more maybe willingness to be front and center and to I don't know. Success sounds like so cliche, and you're going to ask me, well, what does success look like?
Hey, I'll interview you. You can't interview yourself in your own brain right now, Jodi.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you repeat the question?
Well, it's interesting to unpack it, because that, like, what I want for shepherd nurturers that are watching the podcast, right, is when you're saying what you're saying right now, they're going, yeah, me too, right? And what I want to empower shepherd nurturers to see is, like, yes, like, people like me, like, might charge the hill or come up with the idea or be the loudest in the room, but that is instigating. That, you could see that as instigating or awakening a level of change. But the sustainability and the actual longevity and, honestly, the quality of the product, of the group, of the family, of the change is going to be stewarded and brought to life by leaders like yourself. And so, you're not going to be alone. And that's why it's one of the blind spots of, like, well, I mean, I'm just back here loving people. Well, guess what? Jesus said there was, like, really one thing we were supposed to do. And that's what it is.
That's true. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of the story. I think it's funny along this lines it kind of brings together you learning to hear God's voice, leadership, and valuing your impact. Is we reached out to you to do the podcast because we were like, we got to find a shepherd. And we were kind of convicted as a team, because we were, like, going through and realized, like, I don't know if it's us or it's them, but we're not a magnetic team for shepherds. They're just not wanting to hang out with us, I think.
Oh, no.
So we need loving care and support on our team. But we were going through, and I was like, I know it. I was like, I know that Jodi is a shepherd. She's got to be a shepherd. So we went through, and I was like, find out she's taking spiritual DNA. So we had to go back through and, dust off the older records in the filing cabinet. We found it. Yes, she's gone through spiritual DNA. And you are a shepherd. But when we reached out to you, and it was a slam dunk for me, I was like, I want Jodi on the podcast. She's going to be an exemplary example of a shepherd. But when the invitation came to you, that's not how you received it.
No, I mean, yes, it was a huge honor that Daron Earlewine and his team want me to come be on the podcast with you. I mean, any opportunity like this is very humbling. And like I said, I'm very honored, but at the same time, I just was like, I mean, surely there's somebody else that could do this, or that deserves to be in the seat, or that could speak more eloquently than I could with him, or talk about what a shepherd nurturer is. But I had just got done having a conversation the day before with a couple of my closest friends, and had said to them, I feel like the Lord is wanting me to step into leadership roles again and have more of a presence in our church. And to me, that looked like a small group setting. So either leading like a discipleship huddle, or our church offers it's called Rooted, and it's a way to find out who we are and the foundation in Christ. And then obviously you have spiritual DNA courses, which I've never actually helped or offered my services in, even though I have coaching and all that stuff in the background.
Well,
sorry about that.
It's been noted. So continue with the story.
But I had just got done telling them that, because when I was president of the board of the nonprofit, I gave so much of myself to that. And my boys were young at the time. And when I stepped away, it was time for me to step away, because I felt like I had taken it to the point that I could. And then I felt like he was inviting me into just a season of rest, and just, go to church and do your thing and be there for your family and your friends. And then now recently he's been stirring up again, like, hey, you've had your time of rest. And I know that you're leading the hospitality team, but there's more people in the church and outside of the church who need to know about me. And I think that I've equipped you well enough to be able to do that. And so I just got done telling them that I wanted to, reach out to all these different areas and offer myself. And then the very next day, Jen texted me and said, so are you a shepherd nurturer? And I said, yes. And she goes, would you want to be on a podcast with Daron? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I said, there's a reason I'm in the background. I serve in the background.
Right.
But here we are.
Yes. And so you're like,
It
okay,
happened.
Lord, I guess I did actually hear from you.
I did, I guess. Yeah, which is so crazy too. Like, just cool that you are actually speaking to me and I am actually hearing you and you are actually asking me to do these things. And then you put something really tangible and outside of my comfort zone, which I try to put myself in situations because if we're not growing, then we're not living.
Yeah.
So, here it was, and I said, okay, Jesus, I don't really want to do this, but I will.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you did, Jodi. And it's a beautiful example. You know, one of the things that a mentor of mine told me, and I use it all the time in my discipleship huddles, is that God wants to speak to us every day in everyday type of ways. And he's that good of a father, right, that he is guiding and directing us to step into exactly who he's called us to be. And I love that you've developed the kind of connection to him, that you hear his voice, and that you're willing to be obedient and step into the places that make you uncomfortable. And you don't have to be a shepherd nurturer to get to a place where things make you uncomfortable. The reality is that if we're going to follow God into who he's created us to be, if we're going to step in the mission he has for us, that's going to be us continually stepping out of comfort zones and into a place of faith. And I love that you did that. I love the conversation we've had today. And it's normal to you, because you're being yourself. But I want to affirm you in this. Like, I interview people all the time. Being around you just feels peaceful. Oh. Right? Now, I'm sure your husband would be here and be like, listen, if you make her mad enough, things can get crazy.
That's right. Don't not feed me.
Yes.
Then the hanger comes out.
Right. Listen, I understand that. I'm married to a hangry woman. But and a lot of that's who God's created you to be. But I think that's testament to how you have followed Christ, in that there's an aura of Christ in you when you're around. And I think if you're a shepherd nurturer and you're watching, you're listening, please don't underestimate that gift and that calling. Because if there's 43% of the population are shepherd nurturers, and that wasn't an accident. And you look at the need in our world right now for peace, for calm, for love, for restoration, for redemption, it is massive. Yeah. And that charge might be led by a pioneering apostolic leader, but that change is going to be sustained and actually activated by the love and the support of shepherd nurturers like yourself, Jodi. So if last closing thought, you got somebody right now, maybe they feel like, my voice doesn't matter, I can't speak in front of people, but I know everybody's name. I make sure I send them birthday cards. God puts people on my heart, and I feel equipped to love them well. What's a word of encouragement you give to maybe a shepherd nurturer that maybe feels like they should be on the sideline? Yeah.
I would just say, don't let yourself get stuck there, because it's not true. It's not reality. Like you've said, our voices do matter. And you asked earlier about what brought me life when I was coaching with some of my grad students, and it was their realization or their awakening to how God had wired them and how they could use that. But when I do take the action to reach out to people or to step into whatever it is that he has called me into, the response that I get back is so much greater than what held me back from taking the step in the first place, because I get to love people, but then they get to tell me back, like, you don't know how much I needed that today, or I didn't realize that about God, but that if that's true, then that means this is true about me too. So I guess it's just the relationships and the opportunities that you have to grow and for your own cup to be filled if you do take the chance.
I love it. It makes me think of one of my favorite quotes from Gary Smalley, right, where he says that life is relationships and everything else is just the details. Absolutely. And shepherd nurturers like you are gifted by God to bring life. And it's a joy to be your friend, to watch you do it in the context of our church and through the years. And so thanks for being on the podcast today, Jodi.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It. Thank you for saying yes to the things we're going to ask you to do to be a part of Blackbird Mission going forward as well. That's on tape. We have that. We've got that captured, guys. We got it. Okay. Anyway, hey, we'll talk to you again on the next episode of the Daron Earlewine podcast. Until then, remember, right? God made you on purpose and for a purpose. He's near you, not far from you. And he is for you, not against you. We'll catch you guys next time.